Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sidescape Gaming Podcast, episode 60. I'm your host, Jake Burke, and joined, as always, by James St. Charles. And today, he's my favorite person in the world, Ted Libby. But James, I want to talk about you first. How you doing?
Doing good.
Episode 60. You and I have been on.
Wow. Okay. Fine.
Oh my God, Ted, are you kidding me? Right now, you're gonna do this right now while we're on the show.
Yep.
You're gonna show everybody.
No. Listen, somebody else had to screw it up for once.
That's fair, because this is the 60th episode of the Sidescape Gaming Podcast, where every Monday morning a new episode goes live on YouTube.com, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Once a week, we Discord over 500 miles to talk about a video game related topic and what games we are playing. We're actually adding a new bit to the show today, which we will talk about later. And today we are going to talk about the big three: Xbox, Sony, PlayStation, and Nintendo. Where they're at, the crazy things they're doing, kind of how we feel about them, just a whole what the hell the big three are doing. That's kind of what we're calling this episode. So, boys, without any introduction, without anything else, I want to talk to you about something big first. Nintendo announced a new Switch this week. Nintendo Switch...
Sort of.
The Nintendo Switch OLED edition. I haven't talked to you guys at all about this. We have not spoken about this at all, which is really exciting. What do you got? Ted, I want to go to you first. How do you feel about the Switch OLED, and what do you think this means for a Switch Pro or a Switch 2 or whatever the sequel Switch is? I want to kind of know your thoughts.
Well, it was perfectly Nintendo. Let's put it that way. Well, let's go over what happened.
Right.
For a month, almost 5 weeks, I think, there has been rumor and speculation and leaks, quote unquote.
I mean, Bloomberg reported about this. Like a big site reported about a tech leak that a Switch Pro was coming with 4K, more memory, more RAM, everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Like a Switch 2, basically.
Yes. There was a bona fide rumor going around that a Switch 2 was coming out with 4K. It was supposed to be better hardware in the back end.
The games couldn't run on the regular Switch that were Switch Pro exclusive. Like, that was the big rumor. Yeah, sorry.
That's kind of the thing is rumor got out of control pretty quickly.
Totally.
And then Nintendo announced a better screen.
Yes, and a new colored dock.
Different dock, yeah,
And
white Joy-Cons and a dock.
And they're selling just the dock too. So if you wanted the new
dock,
and
I'm kind of interested in the dock. But
people are, yeah.
Yeah, so the actual increases the actual improvements to the Switch are a better OLED, a better screen, a slightly larger screen,
less bezel on the
less bezel, more screen space, an OLED screen, which is kind of up to date with your phones.
And if what I've heard, the screen size increases by under an inch.
Yeah.
To the regular Switch, I think it's 0.8 inches.
Yeah.
From what I've heard.
New color Joy-Cons, neat, and then
better battery.
Better battery, which was technically already there, but like it was low key.
Yeah.
You had to go check your serial numbers to find the one with the better
battery.
battery.
If you had an OG Switch, you had a worse battery.
Yeah,
basically. And
then also the other thing that was added is now it's 64 gigs of internal memory rather than the original 32.
Yeah,
that's it.
And a new dock that has an Ethernet port, which is actually very useful.
Yes, but you could buy a connector that was a USB to Ethernet thing from the very beginning. So
yeah.
So yeah.
What
do you feel?
That's it.
How do you feel about it?
I think it's equally stupid and it makes sense. The Switch has become one of the most popular selling consoles, especially over the pandemic, but even before it was selling out the window. Tons of people have one, tons of people want one. Once again, it's Nintendo. People who are outside the realms of video games are buying it to play it.
Yeah.
And in that kind of a market, you can't exclude people. You can't suddenly say, hey, we're coming out with a Switch 2. All of you who just bought a Switch, who just bought your girlfriend a Switch, sucks to suck.
Yeah.
That might happen anyway because the Switch is having trouble running pretty much everything nowadays.
A Plague Tale Innocence, which just came out for PS5 and Xbox Series X, is also on the Switch, and it's running via the cloud. And from all the past cloud games that have been running, they're awful. They chug. Hitman 3 ran via cloud, and they were just horrible. So that's how they combated new games.
Jesus.
It is struggling. Even Nintendo's first-party games are starting to struggle, or they're starting to have to work around it in strange ways. The market seems ready for a Super Switch. Maybe a Switch Pro, a half-step console, something where, hey, we're gonna make this better hardware device, and we're gonna start making games slightly better, and have like a downgraded version for the regular Switch users, and slowly adjust people. But they didn't do that, and the hardware is, as far as we know, more or less the same.
It is the same. Yeah. It's the same internals. Yeah. How I feel about James, I'll ask you in a second. Just the one thing I think is really interesting is I don't think there's a chance in hell Nintendo right now would release a new Switch variation, because they just sold like 40 million Switches during the pandemic because of Animal Crossing, and they're not going to give up that big of an install base just so Breath of the Wild 2 can look a little better and run a little smoother. Yeah. There's no way they would do that. That's a terrible business decision.
Yes.
James, how do you feel about the OLED Switch that was announced?
So, first off, with when we were talking about like the rumored Switch Pro, I was reading up on Jason Schreier's Twitter, who's part of Bloomberg News, and he was really confident that the Bloomberg team that was, had the evidence for Switch Pro,
got this
it's
right.
Bloomberg China, and they said, he was like saying they got it, like no, their stuff is good, like it should be coming. However, I think what is happening, like this is my belief, they were going to do a Switch Pro, but they probably weren't able to secure a supply chain for the upgraded components, which are the stuff that's getting hit. You can get screens, you can get all these like storage and all that, but it's really hard to get all the processing, the graphics, and all that internal stuff, which they probably didn't have. But they're like, hey, we have bulk of this existing hardware that we are already using. What if we just did like a OLED screen and some storage and increase the price $50 basically?
Yeah, that's a whole other weird thing, is that this thing is $350 compared to $300 for a better screen.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, it's some other stuff, but to me, I'm actually like okay with it. However, typically when we have these kind of pro editions or like a new console, you have a PlayStation is the most famous. You have PS4, PS4 Slim, or like PlayStation Slim stuff,
and
PS4 Pro. Yeah. Like that's what we want.
Well, and
could this be a Slim?
The Xbox One X and the Xbox One S.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that was from the start. And then you Switch is the same, Switch and Switch Lite, or not from the start, but yeah, Switch Lite. I maybe we'll get something next year, but you're right. We were talking about it's struggling already, and then now you're gonna have to power an OLED screen, which is really taxing. Like it's actually like pretty taxing to power the screen.
I guess like what you are saying technically is true, right? Like it is struggling technologically to run certain games. Mario Golf just came out and it looks terrible. Like it does not look comparatively to any modern game. But
what is its treat? Is it 720p that like most of the games are at?
It's 1080 on your TV.
1080 on TV. Okay, but
it's probably 720 on handheld. I believe that sounds right.
Yeah.
So
if you're playing handheld OLED, that's gonna burn, and you have to increase the battery size, which is a good thing they did that.
Which is what they're doing. But in my opinion, does Nintendo really need to upgrade the hardware right now? Probably not. They're Nintendo. They're making.
Are you playing these games for like I want the best resolution? Like
no.
You're playing them for like the content and.
Yeah, you're playing it because it's Mario.
Yeah, and
it's
who bought Mario Golf and gave it a bad review because the graphics weren't good enough.
Yeah,
the
uproar is over the so many rumors about Switch Pro and us not getting a Switch Pro.
Right, that's why people are pissed.
The belief is, for me personally, is that they just weren't able to secure supply chain to do something like that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it'd be really hard. You could upgrade and have it only be like $50 increase if like, hey, there's cheaper, CPUs and we can make the board better. We can do another revision.
Yeah.
But right now in this world, the supply chain is so bad. Everything's backed up like a couple years. Like they had an announcement today for AMD CEO was saying, hey, most of our stuff's going to be impacted until 2022. And that's, very like, hey, maybe it will be up by 2022.
Yeah.
And then, so this console's going to come out, and what's going to happen is the price is not going to be $350. You're going to get scalped. It's a scalper's world. And, I don't know. I mean, really, even if it was a Pro, that would have been worse because it's going to be even more desirable to get.
Yeah, and you wouldn't. I think Nintendo's doing a very smart thing by not splitting their console base right now, especially with Breath of the Wild 2 coming out. Like, that is their game. I think
you would have seen people shift too. Like the hardcore people would have gone to a Pro probably.
Totally. Yeah, of course. But also with the people that have bought it just for Animal Crossing, you're not going to tell them they can't buy the next Zelda game
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and historically Nintendo has always done things in sort of a half step.
all the time.
Yeah, the DS played advanced games, and the Advance played color games. If you go back down that lineage.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the DS had 3 different editions.
Yeah.
It had the
Yeah.
DS, the DS Pro or Lite or whatever it was called,
Headlight.
and then it had the DSi.
And then there was the new 3DS.
3DS.
Well, yeah, but that's a whole different console.
Yeah, 3DS is
Is
different.
that what we're talking about? That's a different thing. Okay.
That is a different console.
So like a world in which a Switch Pro comes out that can still play all of your regular Switch games and more
Yeah.
would be cool. But yeah, like you said, it would split the player base, and a whole bunch of people who just bought Animal Crossing would be pretty upset.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probably. Hopefully. And that being said, a Switch Pro in the like PlayStation sense of like, we're just going to have developers do a high end and a low end version.
Maybe some of this, yeah.
It's not a great idea, especially considering the Switch is struggling kind of sort of right now.
In
every
what
single-
regards? Sorry, just technology wise?
Just in terms of even Nintendo's first party releases are having to slow down on the frame rate.
Right.
Your standard third party game on Switch chugs in comparison to everything else.
Yes.
Just functionally running, not even looks like downgrade the graphics, that's fine, but just like functionally it's struggling to keep up. And so I could imagine a world in which the very first games, third party releases for the Switch Pro, just don't even function, barely function on the regular Switch. Kind of like how Cyberpunk doesn't function on a regular PlayStation 4.
There's a new. Have you seen this in the store with Cyberpunk 2077 on PS4? There is a literal warning that is like, "Hey, by the way, this game is not going to run well on your PS4. Like, you can buy it on PS4, but like we don't recommend that."
Yeah,
like it's a literal warning.
And they can't launch a console with the footnote that like, hey, a lot of this new stuff isn't going to run great on the old stuff.
Yeah.
They would have to really like.
It has to be a new
developers to
console.
have they
No,
would
yeah,
have to
it has
force
to be new.
developers to have a high end and a low end, and it would not go well.
Yeah.
A Wii U.
A Wii U, the Switch U.
I don't think it has to be. I don't think it has to be a new console, just because new consoles are getting the idea of a new console is getting muddy.
Yeah.
A new Xbox plays every single older Xbox game.
Yeah, but that's not how Nintendo is, because you literally can't play old Nintendo games on a new. As I talked about last week, very upsetly, because I can't play Ocarina of Time. Like, and not only that, like there are just Wii games that can't be played on the Switch. Like, they have to remake Skyward Sword to have the motion
absolutely.
controls.
But whatever comes next for Switch, I think should be all inclusive. Even if it is the next step up of like Super Switch games don't run on a regular Switch, I think your old Switch games need to be brought forward. Because the market is changing. Sorry, PlayStation, but like I don't think a lot of Nintendo people would be very happy if even in a year from now, and maybe I'll phrase this as a question for you two. If in a year from now, E3 2022, the Switch 2 is announced as being a generational thing, Switch 1 games won't work on it.
Yeah.
How would that make you guys feel? Because I wouldn't be too psyched about it.
The Switch came out in 2017, so it's 5 years from that. So I would be a little disappointed, but I would also understand, because Nintendo does weird things all the time, and they
behind the times.
They are behind the times. Well, and I was kind of thinking about this when percolating on this topic of like, what are we going to talk about for this show, and think about like the difference between Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox is like Microsoft and Sony compete. Like, they are direct competitors, and despite what they say, they're competing for market share. Nintendo's always had its own little kind of niche. And especially more recently, we're like, Nintendo doesn't give a fuck that they're not 4K. Like, they don't care.
They don't care because they have the IP. They have Mario. They have Zelda. They have Pokemon. Like, they don't care. Like, they have
Mario's
the best.
hat doesn't have to be 4K textures. Like, they're fine with that. They're fine with Breath of the Wild looking more cartoony and stylized than realistic. But because Nintendo's kind of a toy company, they've always kind of been toys. Like, they built the Wii to be like, everyone and their grandma's going to buy this thing. And like, we're going to try to make games for hardcore gamers, but like, it's not going to work, and we're just going to lean into Wii Fit. And then the Wii U was like, we're going to make games for gamers, and nobody cared. And so like, they're always like a very different kind of company that does things their own way. It's like when the 4K rumors of a Switch were coming out, I always kind of, I think maybe even on the show, or especially with talking to James, like was kind of like, I don't know if I believe this is real, because Nintendo doesn't need to be there. They've got 80 million Switches right now. Why would they cut their player base, right? And like next year, if it is announced, Breath of the Wild 2 will launch with whatever console they announce, if they do, because that's a huge selling point. But like, if I was Nintendo, I would make games at this level at 1080p for a while. Like you're selling this thing that nobody else can match. There's no competitor. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point. And who knows if Nintendo actually knows or cares about this, but Nintendo with the Switch is basically alone in a portable gaming market, and people are hungry for the same games they usually play, but in a portable-ish fashion. And you know, I think a lot of the people, especially the ones kind of behind these rumors, or at least eating up these rumors, are going along this idea of like, Nintendo has something here, they just need to bump it up a little bit. And that's not what Nintendo did.
It's not what they do. They never do that. You know?
No, yeah.
The Wii didn't have an HDMI cable. You couldn't plug an HDMI cable into the Wii.
Yeah, it was still aux. So Wii was with the 360 era, because 360 upgraded to have an HDMI, but it was still like,
you could there was a model of the Wii made with a, like the Canadian edition was made with an HDMI port. It's very expensive. Fun fact.
Damn Canadians, they get it all.
I still think the Switch is gonna be good though, because OLED looks incredible.
Yeah,
and so it'll be like same resolution but like clearer, so it'll look better.
Yeah.
Whether it runs better, I don't.
It definitely doesn't make me need a new one.
But for someone like me who doesn't have one, it's like, okay, that's a great option. There's a better one for $50 more.
And that might be their current move. It's just they're just widening their player base.
A Pro would have been better for me, but this is good enough.
Yeah. Exactly. If you don't have a Switch yet, sure, have a slightly better one.
So James,
there's no way they come out with a Pro, by the way. Like you wouldn't just like come out with this and then be like, hey, I have a Pro as well. Like, well, I'm glad you bought this OLED, but
especially next year. You're not seeing this next year. This like.
Probably
There's no way they'd release another Switch next year.
See it announced next year, and then like 2023.
It's gonna piss a lot of people off. Imagine if you bought this thing for $350, and then next year they announce a Switch 2 for $400. Like, I just bought your new Switch for $350.
I would return it.
James, does this make you interested in buying a Switch because of the OLED? Like, does this do anything for you as a person that doesn't own a Switch?
Maybe if I'll see, but I mean, I've been trying to like eventually get a Switch, but I would definitely, like, if I was gonna go for it. My priority is 5 before the Switch, but PS5 before Switch. But I would go for this edition.
Okay, so it does like, actually do something for you.
Yeah, looking at it logically, it's like, okay, I'm gonna spend $50 more to get a better screen, better battery life.
Yeah,
new dock, like more internal storage. But
yeah, I was kind of curious.
64 gigs is that big?
The
first thing I did when I bought a Switch was bought a 250 gig micro SD card, and so I don't worry about storage anymore.
Gotcha.
That being said, though, and this is something I kind of want to just mention, though, that's kind of crazy about Nintendo. Breath of the Wild, the entire game is like 12 gigs. Like,
that's incredible.
It doesn't the gig size, like the file size, is not comparative to a PlayStation game, like where God of War is 70 gigs or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, the games nowadays are like 60, 70 minimum, and your AAAs are 100 plus.
I say, how much is Warzone on your console? It's like 200 on mine.
Jesus,
too much. Yeah.
It's still like incredible that you can have a game like that, and I want to think about it and have it only be 12 gigs.
Yeah,
like that's
it's
yeah. I think the takeaway here for me anyway is I will buy first party Nintendo games every once in a while, and honestly, for everything else, I kind of shy away from the Switch at this point.
Yeah,
which is a bummer for me because I bought the Switch to be a couch version of what I do normally here at the computer. You know, that was it. It's just a sit on the couch while a TV is going or something and play the games that I like to play. And now it's kind of just, I'll play what Nintendo has because they're the only ones I trust to not screw up the hardware.
Yeah.
I've bought and downloaded too many games on sale that just don't look and feel as good as they do in other places. And I've ended up just kind of putting them down.
A lot of indie games, right?
Yeah. Games you would think would be perfect for this are still starting to struggle, which maybe isn't Nintendo's fault necessarily, but
it's probably both. I mean, it's both. What I kind of think of. Oh, sorry, James. Do you want to go for it?
No. You go ahead.
What I was thinking of, and this actually kind of maybe transitions into Microsoft and Xbox, where we can talk about. But playing Hollow Knight on Switch, that game runs at like 30 to 28 frames, like, and dips below that every so often. Where like it's still a nice looking game and doesn't need to run at 75 frames or 120, but playing on Xbox Series S with Game Pass at 60 frames concurrently.
By now.
Yeah, by now, right? But like,
I'm confused. Everything needs to run at 120 frames.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Me too.
But
I can't see below it.
The Switch became like this thing where I was like, this is where I'm going to buy my indie games so I can take them on a plane, I can take them wherever. And now that's being replaced by there's a better way to play indies, and it's Xbox Game Pass.
Is
Because-
Hades on Switch yet?
Yes, it was on. It launched on Switch.
Yes.
And
was-
it did.
It was.
How
on,
does it? Has it? Have you played it on?
Yeah, I play. It's pretty good. It runs at
My-
consistent
I-
30.
Yeah.
Okay.
My
I was just
roommate,
curious about that.
my roommate plays it on Switch. It's very good.
Yeah, it definitely looks a little better on Epic, the game store, but it runs really good on Switch. I played most of it on Switch.
Nice.
Okay. But I do think that there is something to say with this whole indie revolution that was going to be the Switch and how to play indies, and that Microsoft's almost undercutting that with, but you could pay $15 a month and play a lot of indies on this when they launch. And that kind of took a little bit of the steam away from what the Switch was for me, and I don't know if that's the same way you felt, Ted. But
Kind of, yeah. I bought a Switch for a variety of different kinds of gaming experiences, and it once again whittled it down to just Nintendo.
yeah,
Nowadays, if I'm gonna get an indie game, I will check on Game Pass first. I will then check on Steam, and then I will consult a third party to make sure I didn't miss it on Game Pass. Quick
You're not-
anecdote:
Yeah.
my roommate, our personal friend Eric,
Ugh.
has been bamboozled by Game Pass. I think almost 3 times now, where he has bought a game, mentioned it to us, and we said, "Oh, are you playing that on Game Pass?" And he went, "Damn it!" It's happened a lot. It's pretty funny.
it's pretty good. I do think that is becoming a tradition of mine, and there's actually been a few games where I've wanted to play them and then been very much like, it's gonna come to Game Pass. Like, this is a game
Yeah.
that I feel like is gonna come to Game Pass. And if it's not, I'll buy it on sale in 5 months or whatever. Which I don't know if is a good thing or a bad thing for the industry. Which I think is kind of a fascinating thing to think
I mean,
about.
it's a good
but-
thing it goes to Game Pass. Whether or not you're waiting to buy, of course, that's the bad thing. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very complicated question.
Yeah. Well, do you want to keep going on Nintendo, or do you want to switch to Microsoft?
I think we've
Switch. Sorry.
Nintendo'd.
I bought my
Sorry.
Switch for Breath of the Wild. We're done here. Let's talk about Microsoft. Okay, guys?
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild is worth $360, by the way. I just want to put that out there. If you're going to buy a Switch and $360, Breath of the Wild, 100% worth it. James, we'll talk later, okay? It's worth it. Let's get you into Switch. Okay. I want to talk about
Your
Xbox.
sale would be like a car salesman.
Yeah.
I see you in a new Switch.
I see you with an
This is the
OLED
perfect
Switch, Breath of the Wild, on the 5 freeway tonight. That's how I feel. Okay. I want to talk about Xbox. I want to talk about Microsoft. I feel like you and I, all of us in this podcast are very high on what Microsoft's been doing the last year and a half.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, Ted just shrugged.
It's yeah. I'm hyped on it.
Yeah, are you? Because when I said you were, you went.
Yeah.
Ted, how do you feel about Microsoft right now? 2021, where we just saw their Xbox presentation. How do you feel about them?
They're doing it for me.
Mhm.
I through a strange means was given a choice of a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. I picked the Series X.
A big mistake, but yeah.
Yeah, I picked the Series
Critical
X
error.
because I had Game Pass on my computer and was kind of using it as my gaming hub.
Mhm.
As somebody out there with not too much money in the pockets, as we all are,
Yeah.
just having that service to play a couple games that I know are going to be on there forever, and then to just try new things out every once in a while. It seemed like a good fit.
Yeah.
And then, as time happens, things move on. We end up getting a large TV for the house. Plug that into the Series X. It looks great. And I think that kind of conceptualizes what I'm saying. Is that like when we got the new TV, we had an entire catalog of new and interesting games to play.
Mhm.
There's a lot of jokes going around right now that Microsoft doesn't release anything new for their new console. But that being said, I plugged a Series X into a 4K TV and had plenty of 4K games to play, and that was super cool. And I didn't have to pay that much for it. I paid $15 a month. And so that's just really fitting in with me and my lifestyle right now. I think come November, if I had a PlayStation, I would be having to make some tough calls.
In what
and-
way?
What 1 or 2 games am I buying?
What am I
this holiday
spending my
season?
money
Yeah.
on? Yeah.
Versus, especially after that E3 lineup, they're all just kind of going to come to me.
Yeah.
And if I keep paying this monthly subscription, I will get, new
Well-
releases if I'm looking for new releases.
You don't even have to keep. You could be like, okay, this month I don't see anything interesting, or like maybe I'm just not interested in playing the game. You can just skip a month and you still keep your library, which is a great thing. I found out recently when my card was lost and I had to get a new one, and it kept all my stuff. And when I put my new card in, that was great.
Yeah.
Versus
It kept all your stuff. What do you mean?
Well, it saved. It knew what games I had downloaded, and with my Game Pass.
How'd you lose your card?
Went to a restaurant and
he was drinking a lot.
Yeah.
Also, just with really cool thing with when you have a PC and an Xbox using Game Pass, the save functionality, the cross save between the save syncing is incredible, and that I think is just something that is not talked about a lot. That like, if you want to play Slay the Spire on your computer and then you go play it on your Xbox, it's the same save file you can just jump into, which is really cool.
Xbox.
I did. Yeah, it's a good game.
Xbox is doing those kinds of. They're making those small background moves that don't make headlines, but you're right, are absolutely like things that I struggle to think about life without now.
Yeah.
A great example. I'm playing City Skylines on the TV with the
I saw
Xbox.
that. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's a great game. It really sucks you in. And then over the weekend, different people are using the TV. That's totally fine. Downloaded City Skylines on my Game Pass in here, and just loaded up the exact same save.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was super cool.
And easy. Like that's the thing too, is like it's not a complicated process to move your save over. It's just there.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a big thing that needs to be talked about, because owning a PS4 and a PS5, not an easy process to get these saves over to PS5 games.
Yeah. And I'm excited for Xbox's future as somebody who cares enough about new releases, but not enough to have to play them all. Yeah. I'm very excited to let Xbox and their service serve me with new releases eventually. I know, they will be coming out with new games, and that will be a very interesting experience to just go, this game just came out. I guess I'll check it out. Or that game just came out.
Well, I think on top of that, like a big game that's coming out that we've talked about a little bit on the show is The Ascent, which is that cyberpunk twin stick shooter that we all have talked about. It kind of looks interesting. And I think like that game's on Game Pass, where it'd be like kind of a tough sell to get like, Ted, you got to buy The Ascent so we can all play it. Ted would be like, nah, right, I'll get to it.
Most of my time in high school was spent going, hey, have you heard of Steam? You need to download Steam. All right, now you need to buy this game.
Yep.
There's a 4-pack. If you're willing to give me the money, I'll just buy the 4-pack and then gift you. And that was a lot of my experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
So having the service just fixes that,
And that there's no competitor. Like, that's the thing that blows my mind.
There is no competitor.
Like, PS Now is a thing, but PS Now sucks. It's gotten a little better, I guess, but...
I guess EA Play is not a competitor. It's actually joint now, I think. Like, they're actually together, because you can get an EA Play subscription with your Xbox Game Pass.
Is EA Play just EA games, though? They don't have any third parties.
Just EA games. So, again, that's like very niche developer.
Yeah, right.
Versus and Microsoft's pool.
To be fair, I actually would like to see a competitor rise to meet this challenge. I think that would be a healthy thing for all parties involved. But I'm curious how somebody would try and do it.
It would have to be Sony, right?
It has to be Sony, yeah. So
that's how I feel.
It could be Steam.
True.
Steam.
Valve and Steam together make a lot of money.
No, so actually, I'm gonna tell you why it can't be Steam, because Steam's already integrated with Xbox, and they have a partnership already for their Game Pass through Steam.
Do they really? What do you mean in that? I've never heard about this.
So you can through Steam, like they have partnership for Xbox games, like in terms of using their pass. They already have EA Play integrated with Steam. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Game Pass.
They have integrations. They could easily just start we're gonna have.
I don't think there's a point for them to compete. And that's the thing.
I would agree with James in this regard. I don't think
Microsoft's gonna be like, okay, I'm just gonna take off my. I'm sorry. They're just gonna take all their games, and why would they compete when they already have? They're double dipping.
Right, and I also think the big thing is first party games that fill Game Pass. Like the majority of the games that are coming to Game Pass in the next 3 or 4 months are first party day one games that Microsoft's just established. Where I think that's where Sony would have to get into making these first party games for their service, but I think that would take away from the budget of what the games are. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
These first party exclusive games to Game Pass do release on Steam, probably Epic Game Stores. I haven't checked Epic Game Store as well, but
they're releasing.
They're not. But some of them, as we've seen, they're not going to Sony.
Right.
So, but I mean, do you want to talk about Sony right now? We're talking about Xbox, but
yeah, we'll talk about them both. I think at the same time.
So what I want to say about Sony is recently they've made some interesting purchases. They've purchased up like 2 that we know of PC primarily port companies that port PlayStation games. And then the third one that is not confirmed, but would be really great if it is that one, because that is Bluepoint is made did the Days Gone port, and they outsourced the Horizon port, which was a little shaky, but we've seen how well they did with that. And I'm pretty sure Sony is going to do a move where they're going to start porting their games. Maybe. I think so. I'm trying to think like time frame wise, maybe like a year or two after initial release.
What Herman Holstes said in an interview is that they target about 2 years before something goes to PC. And he said as a general barometer, but it sounded like that's kind of what they're targeting.
And that's fine. Like that. But we had Death Stranding come earlier though, right?
Death Stranding's different though, because it's not first party. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe not. But
yeah, Death Stranding is a weird concept.
So I think they're gonna start targeting. But then I'm trying to think like where they're releasing, because Days Gone did release on Steam, but they primarily PlayStation ports were releasing on Epic Game Store. So maybe Epic might make a play here for
like the Sony games. That'd be kind of interesting as well.
Yes.
I guess, yeah, the Sony PC thing is an interesting thing that I don't usually think of when it comes to Sony, but that is a pretty big market that they just have.
I think they've seen how well their ports have been doing, like sales-wise, and maybe they're like, okay, maybe we won't do this pass approach, which is fine. Like, they don't have to. But maybe we'll sell some of our old games to PC port, and just, why not? Like, you get more money in.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about direct competitor to Game Pass, I don't think anything can compete with it. Microsoft's just too big, and they're pouring so much money into this. It is like,
it's the most important thing to Microsoft is Game Pass, not their consoles.
Yeah, they are steering their entire ship.
They're selling their service. Yep. That's what they're selling,
and they're selling it very well.
A company as big as something like Amazon could come in and do something. They're trying to launch.
It will not. Amazon has failed so much with their games recently.
That New World game apparently is coming out.
They've so many Amazon games. Like they do not have. It's like Google. It's like you can try, but you need like the team behind it to like really successfully get it.
But Amazon has a user base, and they know how to utilize it. Amazon owns Twitch, and if Twitch came out with a Twitch Select,
Twitch has a game store. You can get.
Not a game store. Not a store. He's not talking about
service.
A service, and then they promoted it on Twitch. They have a very large dedicated user base.
No, people. So as we've seen with PC, they're very firm on what they want to play. So they like do not like too many clients. So they like Steam, and then maybe Game Pass is enticing because it's like, okay, it's cheap, and then I'll play some Game Pass. But they will like not be on GOG, like, which is another popular store. So for them to be like, okay, you have to be Twitch sign in. It has to be super.
They have to be wearing clothes, though. I heard about that. There was an
but
issue
it has to be like. First of all, it has to be better than Game Pass and cheaper.
Well, okay,
you have to be willing to like go.
So think of this with everything, mainly with Game Pass, because I guess that's where we're on. Game Pass eventually is going to be on your Roku TV. Game Pass is not
the cloud service.
Yeah, like it is not just going to be on your console, right?
No.
What if Amazon hits that market, or whoever, Google finally is like, we've realized Stadia was a bad idea, but now we've got this. I think there is an interesting realm of competition with someone we're not thinking about primarily, hitting the TV market, not the PC market.
How Amazon should play this is they have one of the best web services in the world. AWS is better than Azure. And if they utilize like the background of their service with another, like maybe someone else could use their services, that's how they should make the money. Versus Microsoft's all on their own. Like Microsoft has everything. They use their Microsoft Azure services for their cloud computing, and Amazon has that exact same service but no like cloud platform. Google tried. They have Stadia. But it's just so hard when you're like a new dog coming in with established with ties with owns developers. Owns everything that you like can possibly have on your store. Amazon's going to come in new, and they've had unsuccessful games releasing big games that the AAA money has gone to.
They've had like a couple games.
They had like 5 or 6 studios that they've closed while developing.
It is like, if I was a developer and someone approached me with money, I'd be a little bit worried, from Amazon.
They approach you with
Just
money.
like-
That's all you need to hear.
Well,
They will feed your family for the next 6 to 12
you release your
months.
game and then nothing happens with it.
Yeah.
It dies.
Yeah, you got paid.
Yeah, I do think there is an interesting point to what James was saying of Google Stadia kind of proved that you can't just half-heartedly try to jump into the game market.
Yeah.
Google Stadia,
They have a good team. You can do it.
they built Google Stadia's tech is really good. If you actually like play a game on Stadia, it's actually runs really well just running on my Google Chrome browser. But they came into Google Chrome being like, we've got 6 games from you, and they're all from 2 years ago. Are
They're
you
old.
excited?
They're not really like, okay,
Yeah.
is this really testing your like equipment too far? Like,
And that I think is the biggest. Like Destiny 2 was their big game, and that was like a 3-year-old game at that point that people play, but like that's all you got. Like, okay, sure. So I think that you do have to kind of come into it knowing that like Microsoft has now 20 years of experience.
yes.
How do you compete with that, and who does compete with that? So I'm,
Some of the biggest studios in gaming.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
and now Bethesda.
Yeah, right.
Now they own Bethesda.
Yeah, you compete with that by going after the games that, or the people, I should say, that care more about the games than about the releases. You go after games that have been going strong for years and years and years. With
That's interesting.
fans and community bases that aren't there for what's new, that are there because this is their game. They play World of Warcraft, and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft is still a $15 a month subscription. If you want
Is
to
it
talk about
really?
a subscription, yes. If you want to talk about a subscription-based game that's still
fuck.
doing it, like WoW is still beating Game Pass. People have been paying for that for 20 years at this point.
They have no choice.
Yeah. So like there are other avenues to go down, which is why I was saying Twitch would be interesting, because there's a world of games that is played on Twitch and then we don't really hear about.
I mean, they tried. So Twitch was like having like incentives with Prime. Like if you had Twitch Prime, they would like you get like a free game a month.
From what I understand,
I haven't seen a free game
popular.
in so long.
Oh really? I haven't. Yeah.
I would just like, okay, free game, cool, add it, never play it.
Yeah.
Like, and they
Where
were
would
like
that
good games.
get added to? Would that be added to your Steam account? I don't know this.
So Twitch actually has its own like client. They bought Curse. So Curse client used to be like a modding client for like WoW mods and Minecraft.
Okay.
So you can play like Minecraft mods through this little Twitch client, and that's where they are. So it's like a little like separate game client, like Discord basically, but Twitch.
Yeah.
And all your games would be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I launched like Minecraft through it sometimes because it has like the mod packs.
Huh. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, that was like a really old.
The
old
takeaway
thing.
is whoever comes up to bat really has to swing for the fences.
Yeah.
I don't think Amazon's in that mode though. That's the thing.
No,
No, I don't think they are right now.
No one is prepared to do this.
They are not. They have not publicly said that they are anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, but to be honest, like think about Netflix. For X amount of years, it was just Netflix.
Yeah.
And now all of these streaming services have rise, and they're not. I mean, they're competing with Netflix. Netflix is still the mind share, obviously. Like that's what you think of when you think of streaming services. But like, there's Hulu's a great streaming service that has put a lot of content in. That Disney Plus is obviously. I mean, shit. You can watch Star Wars and Marvel. You've done it there, but
yeah.
I do think that there is someone that will come up. I don't think it's Sony. I think Sony is your movie theater. Sony is your
Sony's doing their thing.
Yep. Sony is you buy our games for $70, and you know you're getting this cinematic experience, and you will fucking like it. And if you don't like it, fuck you. I know, but I do agree that like I do think that like that's what Sony is, and they're not trying. Like PlayStation Now is an afterthought. Think of how often you hear that word. You don't. Every time Xbox talks about a game, it's on Game Pass. That's what you hear right away. Yeah, I think Sony's just in such a different idea of what it is to be a console manufacturer and game publisher. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the big three? James, you have
just the last thing with Sony. I know there were like rumors about like these indie studios that were like having troubles with Sony. And to me, it was like more. You heard one dev complaining. I feel like Sony is probably one of the best studios to work for in terms of like, if you had an indie game and you were approached by, they like have so much support, and whether or not like they're hard and critical. Like I remember when we always bring up the God of War documentary where like they showed it to like one of the higher ups and they hated it.
Yeah, to Shuhei Yoshida. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they like kept working on it, and eventually it was like, okay, yeah, this is.
If you're really lucky, they'll put you on a state of play when there's nothing else to talk about.
Just like last State of Play, which, oof, we don't even need to talk about that. They're making a second Moss, guys. That's what you need to know about State of Play.
Gaming right now is like, you have to write it off. It is a
topic
hard
has
time.
changed. Yeah.
We're in the dark ages for gaming right now. There's not much.
We are absolutely not. We are in the
We're
the
scrapping at
gilded age.
We're
in a
scraping
great
at the
age.
bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. This is
What
the
game are you playing?
greatest-
What new game are you playing right now that you're loving right
I'm
now?
playing A Plague Tale Innocence, which came out 2 years ago, but it's
great new gameplay.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a great time right now.
In 11
Yeah.
days, I'm going to be playing Death's Door, and that game looks fucking fantastic.
That's the
Death's Door looks real good. I texted you guys both the trailer. Ted, how dare you not watch it?
I'm a busy guy.
Stop working. Start being on Discord.
Sorry.
I watched it. I liked it.
It looks good. Okay, guys,
Yeah.
we're going to wrap up our show. Ted, do you have one final thought?
No.
Okay. We're going to do a little something different. Instead of what we've been playing, we are going to have our Before We Go topic. Before we go, we're just going to kind of share one thing that is in some sort of media that we're into right now. Can be whatever, TV, show, book, whatever. And talk about that and kind of share why we're into it and if we recommend it or not. Ted, are you prepared for this?
No.
Great. I'll go first. James, are you prepared for this?
I'm prepared. Go ahead.
Okay, we've got our order. Ted, you're going last. Start thinking. So I'm actually not going to talk about a game. Though I will just say A Plague Tale Innocence, very interesting game. Looks great on the PS5. Though I'm going to talk about a book. I'm reading Project Hail Mary by Andy.
What?
A book? So what they've started to do, and it's pretty recent, is that they take thicker cardboard and they put thinner paper in between, and then there are words on it. And like a movie, they tell a story, but in your brain.
Other pictures?
In your brain. They're brain pictures.
I'm out.
I'm reading Project Hail Mary by Andy, I believe it's Weir.
Martian Man.
Yeah, The Martian. He wrote The Martian. This is his, I believe, second book, but it's his next like sci-fi book. I'm like, I don't know, 100 pages in. It's very good. It's very interesting. It is similar-ish to The Martian, where you are with a very charismatic character, but the kind of premise of this book is that the mission is being had in space where astronauts were selected to go solve a crisis. An astronaut wakes up from essentially cryosleep, but he has no memory of who he is or what he's doing. And basically like the suspended state of sleep has like affected his memory. And as he goes through the ship trying to uncover where he is and what he's doing, he starts to get like flashbacks of his memory. And still into the point where I'm in the book and he still has not known his name. I only know his profession and how he got to the ship, which is really interesting. And so it's fun to be along with this character, and it's all told in the first person. That is like discovering the book and himself as you are discovering himself. Very good book. Really recommend it. It's the guy Anywhere is a great writer, and he is a very comedic writer in dire situations. He writes like very comedic characters that handle inevitable death in a very fun way. So I really recommend it. Project Hail Mary. It's a great book. There you go. It's not a gaming podcast book. James,
weird fun fact about Andy Weir. He actually he helped develop Warcraft 2 while he was writing The Martian.
Wow.
He worked for Blizzard.
All the way back then? He was writing The Martian back then? Damn.
All right, so The Martian started as like a forum post. It was like
every
internet,
blog
like,
post was a forum post. Yeah.
He posted blogs, and he kind of started just asking the question: if someone was stranded on Mars, how could they escape? And that's how the book started.
Yeah.
And he was asking those questions while he was working on Warcraft 2.
Huh. That's crazy. I didn't know that. Well, hey, it all
Bringing it
ties
back
back to video games. Love to hear it. James, what do you got for me?
I guess my meeting's gonna be a movie,
Ooh.
but this is more like 3 movies. Like it's a trilogy that's releasing right now.
Star Wars.
Fear Street. Have you guys seen
No.
Fear Street?
What is Fear Street?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Part 2 just released last night, today. So, and then the third one will release next week. So it's 3 movies. It's a trilogy, but they're all separate movies. And it's like old school slasher, but with a really interesting story behind it. So like you think like, I don't know, have you seen Scream? I don't you're not really into
I don't fuck with horror movies,
Yeah.
so no, I haven't. But okay.
it's like a slasher movie with like, but it's like, here's the present, the next movie is going to be the past, and then the final movie is going to be like how it ends.
Huh.
So I think it's a really creative take, because there's going to be 3 movies. It plays out really great, like setting up why you have to go back to the past or something like that for this. And I'm big. I like horror a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys too, but I really recommend Fear Street. It's not too scary, but it's creative. They think about like challenges. It's R.L. Stein's book, I think.
Oh.
made into a movie
Oh, okay.
Goosebumps.
or a series. Yeah, Goosebumps. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oral Side. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's good. Like
On
I was
Netflix?
like surprised. Yeah, on Netflix right now. So I wasn't like too, but I what sold me was like, oh, it's Goosebumps. Like okay,
Oh, very cool.
so yeah.
Fear Street. Interesting. Ted, what do you got for us? Anything?
Yeah, you guys are gonna laugh at me.
Let's hear it.
So I go to work
Yep.
most of the time.
We all do, actually. We all have jobs. It's not
I
just
gotta
you.
work.
Yeah. But I have to go into a building most of the time.
Right.
And I recently was sleuthing around on my lunch break, and I found the lounge, the employee lounge, which has been locked for a year and a half. And I got in.
Oh, good for you, Judd. That's good.
Yeah, and there's a pinball machine in there.
Wow. Is that what you're going to talk about? Pinball?
Yeah. So I've been sneaking into the employee lounge to play the Star Wars Stern table. For those
Ooh.
pinball aficionados out there, it's really fun. Pinball's just super fun, and when you make it free, oh, it's great.
What's the company that made the table? Does
Stern.
it say?
Stern?
Stern?
Yeah, Stern.
I've not heard Stern.
All right, so
What?
Ted,
I've heard Bali and
Yeah, Bali and Williams, they're the old.
Yeah.
Stern's kind of the only one still making
Stern
tables
new?
right now.
Or Stern's
Yeah.
the only one making tables? Okay, so it's a newer one.
They're making state of the art tables. Yeah, what's up?
what kind of Star Wars we talking about here? You know me, I like a lot of the stars, I like a lot of the wars. Are we talking about prequels? We talking about sequels? We talking about original trilogy? We talking about Rogue One? We talking about Clone Wars? Where are we going?
That hurt my brain. It's original trilogy. Pinball is kind of dumb. It's just highlights of everything.
Okay, so it's just like the original trilogy all over.
It's just all three movies just mashed
How
together.
often does Harrison Ford's go, you?
He does when you complete his Harrison Ford mission.
Is that what it's called too, the
so-
Harrison Ford mission?
No, it's called like Escape from Boba Fett, I think is the actual
Oh,
mission.
okay.
Pinball is super complicated if you actually start reading the rules. There are 5 to 7 points that you're supposed to hit the ball through, and then you do that in very specific orders, in different ways, and in different time limits to get perks. But it's
multi-ball.
It's gotten really complicated. So Jake, you pick your character at the beginning of this.
At pinball, you pick your character?
You pick your character, and your
Pinball
character affects the stats and the different kinds of quests you get. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. So I've been playing as Luke Skywalker, and I'm
Attaboy.
specifically going for the like blow up the Death Star, fight Darth Vader mission.
Two crucial things he does, yeah.
Yeah, which is a very specific set of things you're supposed to do with the machine. And it's a lot of
Weird.
fun.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I did not know
pinball is great. Like it actually has like kind of like story elements to it in the sense like how you have to, like,
There's
navigate.
if you actually like look into how to play it correctly, it's very
it's
interesting.
not just like boop 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 boop, boop done.
That's so funny. I would never have guessed that about pinball.
Yeah,
Oh,
I learned
there's
about this a couple
creative
years
tables.
ago. I thought pinball was just hit the things into the things and get points, whatever. But no, it's pretty complicated.
Huh.
And I'm really upset because the top 5 scores is all the same guy, and he's really good. And I'm pretty sure it's the overnight security guard.
Have you seen the digital pinball table, Ted? Like it's like an actual pinball table, and then it's a big screen, and you can play any table you want on it.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
With pinball
And
arcade and other kind of
plays
simulators. Yep.
Yeah. It's really, really creative.
This is a video game related question. Do you guys play video pinball like on your console at all? Like that's or on the PC?
Oh,
That's
there's
like a
one
very
game on
big
Game
thing.
Pass that I played.
So yeah, because pinball simulation has become a thing.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's very big. Well, sort of. So pinball arcade is what I've played. That's what I was going to talk about. And I have a fun story that I will share with you now. Pinball arcade, made by Farsight Studios, seems to have run along rough times. They're not updating their games anymore properly, and the Stern specific app for iOS devices is broken. Everything is free. It's not supposed to be free. Everything's supposed to be $10 a table.
There's your
Buy
hit,
now.
kids. Go.
Yeah.
Go, go, go.
I've been playing the Ghostbusters table for free on my iPad in my downtime. Because I can, because I'm cheating the system, I guess. I don't really know. I don't understand, but
Unless they just made everything for you.
no, because I downloaded it for the Xbox because I was really confused, and it's $10.
It's so funny.
15 bucks on
Are
Steam.
you sure they can charge on iOS
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Everybody
kidding me?
charges on
Apple-
iOS.
after the EGS?
Yeah. That's what Epic's whole deal is about.
They're
whole
still in
lawsuit is
court,
about.
right? That's still a thing.
Yeah, that's
They're
still in
okay.
court. Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about
But yeah,
that
I've
lately.
been just goofing around with some pinball. It's been fun.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
It's fun that I have free access to it at work.
That's pretty cool. And then you don't have to keep putting in quarters because that's always the worst part about pinball.
Honestly, yeah, right. As soon as I have to do that in a real pinball situation, I think I might be out. Pinball is still dumb. Like it's still three balls and you're out.
Money-wise,
and that was 25, 50 cents, sometimes $1 down the drain. Like,
interesting. I did not know that pinball had quests, but we learn something in every episode. You know.
Yeah, it's nuts. I'll have a whole video on it coming soon.
Oh, great! Awesome. Thank you. I love to see it.
Yeah, Pinball Quest.
Pinball Quest by Ted Libby's Pinball Quest. And thank you guys so much for watching the 60th episode of the Sidescape Gaming Podcast. That's Ted, that's James, and I'm Jake, and we will see you next week.